session today. If we are all good, then we can take off. We are beginning to record so that if anything, we can share the content with your colleagues who may not be able to join or may want to have a second take at what was discussed. So first of all, let me take your questions if you have any on Hobbes and Locke. We couldn't meet last week, Monday, because of the holiday. We'll plan a makeup possibly in the Vision Week so that you have your full sessions. That is if we need it at all. Let me just quickly also prompt that next week, God willing, I will take presentations from you in groups. I'll take group presentations from you on what you see projected on your screen. A critical summary on Martin Luther King Jr. and then Socrates' Crito. Some say Plato's Crito. The two texts will be done per the group description there. So all those who are in groups 1 to 10, you work together as a group. So if you are group 1 members, you work together as a group, you read and then critically summarize Martin Luther King's paper, letter from Birmingham jail, and tell us what you make of the paper. It's a critical summary. Then you produce one group work having all members' name. When I say all members, not just nominal members, but here we refer to those who participated. You see, put their details on it, and then you submit. I would want their IDs and their names. Then I'll determine who will come and do the presentation and who will answer what question the class will have for that person. So those of you who did rationalism with me, you have a fair idea of what I'm talking about. I don't want individual submissions. It will score a 0 no matter how well done it is. We want you to work in groups. We don't want one person working and writing names of people there that they are in the group. You will score a 0 and I will not give any mark for it, please. So understand that work as a team. Gather yourselves, get yourselves together, so to speak. You can find yourselves on or by email or on your platforms there, and then you do a teamwork and produce a critical summary per group. So those who are in groups 11 and above, you would also do Crito and then produce a critical summary on that. So I just wanted to say that quickly. Now, if you have any questions, let me have them. Then we'll quickly go to Rousseau and then launch into Taylor's paper. I'll hear more from you and then I'll only fill in the gaps. If you are not prepared as a class, then we will end the session. And when I meet you next week, I will continue until you are ready to give me responses on the given topic. This is level 300. We have to help you read, okay? So I'm not asking for understanding, but I'll need to know that whether you have read or not. All right. So let's take questions if you have any quickly. Keep your hands up if you have any questions on Hobbes, Rousseau, etc. Any questions, please? Any questions? Okay. There are no questions. Then I will quickly project the slides for Rousseau, and then I'll ask one of you to read quickly, please. Anyone who wants to read? Let's read. Yes, please. Thank you very much. So I think that you will see my Rousseau projection now. Please go ahead, my lady.
Rousseau's theory of the social contract is based on the principle that man is born free, but everywhere he goes, he is in chains. State of nature. The natural condition of man is a state of freedom and equality. Man is neither constrained by repressive state mechanisms nor dominated by his fellow men.
Good. Do you understand that, please, class? Can someone explain that quickly? What they make of that from Rousseau's paper? These are just pointers, highlighters I have put together for you. Anyone wants to explain what Rousseau means by man is born free, but everywhere in chains? No, is your hand up to read or to respond to that? No, Bing.
Doc, please, I wanted to read.
Thank you so much. So let's take anyone who wants to explain what Rousseau means by that. This can be one of your IA questions. Now you have to answer for say 2 months within a space of 2 minutes. What does Rousseau? Bright, can you mute your thing up? You're not reading for me. So could you get yourself muted, please? I just muted all. That's the online ticket. I beg you, please. Okay. So let's take Priscilla Chrema. That is, if Priscilla wants to react to man is born free, but is everywhere in chains.
Yes, Doc, please. Rousseau means that even though we are born free and not physically restricted by any rules and regulations, when we commit to be in a society, we are instantly bound by all the rules that the society has given us.
Excellent. Excellent. So you can give practical examples from being members of a state like Ghana to engaging, to getting engaged to a guy or a lady, to, getting yourself into university. If you want to be in the university, then you will have to write exam at a certain time. You can choose one, and so on and so forth. If you want to be in marriage, then you can't play. I think we had those funny examples during our physical lecture. So you want to be bonded in marriage and enjoy the goodies of marriage, it will come with a restriction. You want to have babies, well, you sleep at night, you babysit, and your little mountains on your chest will lose their hold in no time, and all that. So the point is, man is born free without any restriction, so to speak, without any fetus, without any limitations, if you like. Whatever man wants to do, man here in the generic sense, he or she is able to do. But as soon as he or she enters into human society, civil society, organized society, then restrictions come up. He or she is restricted. That is the point being made. Okay. Thank you very much. Now I can continue reading. I think that is good. You did better here. Let's continue, my lady. So I projected the next slide.
As population increases, man has new needs. The desire for new needs leads to exploitative relationships. The invention of private property has paved way for social inequality among men. Greed, competition, vanity, and vice has set in and characterized the natural state of freedom, happiness, and equality.
Very good. Well read. May I have someone elaborate? So your colleagues will see that you are doing the lecture because it's already set up nicely. Who will explain that slide for us? This is Rousseau's state of nature first, and then how he, based on this diagnosis, he arrives at the suppositions he makes and the proposals he makes to deal with this problem. Anyone wants to explain what that slide said? Anybody? Oh, all right. So Rousseau's point is, I mean, as explicit as soon as in private property is invented, we are not born naturally owning anything. It's an invention. It's a creation. Okay. One day, one person will take hold of some mango tree over there and say, "That is mine." And because he owns it, then it means it's no longer accessible to the whole natural human race any longer. And that is what will generate the problem of what? Inequality. So from large number of people, see, let me take you one step back, see? We would naturally have no constraints, but then as soon as one person lays hold of property, then exploitative relationships come up because our needs will exceed the provisions available. Okay? So as population increases, man has new needs. The desire for new needs will lead to exploitative relationships. As soon as we invent private property, this is mine, then there arises social inequality. Greed, competition, vanity arises. And according to Rousseau, that interferes with our natural state of freedom and what? Freedom and what? Happiness and equality. Okay, I need to go on. Why then would men want to create the social contract?
Why men would create the social contract? A continual existence of this condition will mean the end of humanity. The only way to preserve themselves is to form an association or a new social organization through the creation of a social contract. In order to ensure that everyone's right is protected and guaranteed, the contract must require each associate to alienate all his rights to the entire community.
You alienate all your rights to the entire community. So here again, we do not see any claim of what? War of all against, or an animalistic, if you like, state of nature. No, we don't see that. We see human persons who would naturally have been born free, now aiming at what? Owning property. So that which was left to the disposal of all human beings, natural resources, gold, diamond, what have you, farmland, sea, rivers, etc. As soon as man lays claim to it and says, this is mine, it is no longer a public property. That starts the need for what? Social contract. Because then there is insecurity. Then there is what? Social inequality. Because the one who has more may lay claim to so much. You see how it is that there are so many lands, even in our nation, Ghana here. You see the land, there plenty, several acres, thousands and thousands of acres of land. But someone says it is theirs. Meanwhile, they were born and they wore diaper on their mommy's lap. You don't know how they came with that land, but they own it. It is theirs. Some are called stool lands. Some are called, ethnic traditional lands. Some are for a certain king. But no king came from their mother's, tummy with land. Which part of their mommy's tummy will they carry the land? It is private ownership, says Rousseau, that generates the social inequality, the restriction. So not just ownership of the physical land we see, but as soon as man started saying, this is mine, that is the source of what? Social inequality, which interferes with our freedom, our happiness, our equality that we would have had, and which now has generated the need for what? A social contract. To do what? I keep projecting and switching from slide to slide to show you the point. Okay, to do what? So that we will have this new form of an association where you see it in a minute, where each individual will alienate himself of his or her rights and join it to what? The collective self. Please read, my lady. Who is reading for me? I didn't see your hand. So who is reading? I'm making a note so you end your point. Who is this?
Please, is Grace.
Grace what? Grace, add your surname.
Bofa.
Okay. Because I'm giving marks for that. So let me know who. Okay, Grace, go ahead.
Rousseau on the general will. This means that each individual will be compelled to submit to the general will. The
Please
general
take
will
note.
differs
It's a
from the will of
compulsion.
all.
Mate, Grace, hold on. It is a compulsion. We will compel that person to submit to the general will. It's a compulsion. It's not a choice. As soon as the person contracts, it means that he or she is giving away his or her individual. Hey, who is recording me and feeding? And the feedback is too strong. Please, who is this? Mute. Get yourself muted, please. Oh dear. Okay. So much so that we will compel you to submit to the general will. That is why if you belong to a body politic called Ghana, and we have rules and laws regulating us, and you want to go against it, we will cause you to conform. That's the point being made here. Sister, continue, please.
The will of all is the sum of particular wills or interests of each individual, which by its nature tends to be partial. The general will is the collectively held with that aims at the common goals or interests and tends to equality.
Okay, so in simple terms, he's making a distinction between what one will call the general will and what one will call the will of all. He says that Rousseau advocates for what he calls the general will, that is the collectively held will, a will that we all subscribe to. We here referring to the body politic Ghana, for example, the Asante group, the Beson, who those 7-member committee that went to make the decision on behalf of that family or something, you know, it is heading towards what you would consider as what consensus. That means there might have been differing views, but as soon as the collective make that decision, it is held by all, collectively held will. It's not the will of you, me, this person, that has been, so to speak, summed up together. That is where you would have a majoritarian rule, for example, because you'll be calculating the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wills, one after the other, and then put them together and say that is the will of all. No, it is the one that is owned collectively by the self. This is Rousseau's point. So collectively held will and not what the will of all. I give an example using plantain and cassava when I'm teaching. Plantain and cassava, when you represent them in a bowl, you can have a bowl of them, there's plantain, there's cassava there. But when you pound it into fufu, it's a blend. You can't take the specifics out. I just met the city campus folks. I used the what we call the catty cake thing. You see that the catty cake, you have one that you have blended all the granules, the peanuts, and mixed it with the melted sugar, brown sugar, sort of, in a way that you can't pick out the granules again. There's that one. Then there's the one that have the granules standing inside, one, the peanut put together with the sugar, uh, melted into brown, okay? Where you are able to pick out the granules afterwards and still leave the brown sugar there. What's the point? You can have one mold like this, inside which you still see everyone's, well, one there that have been put together. So you are able to take out the will of Nancy, take out the will of Grace, take out Mrs. will, and say that I said I wanted to be part of the decision, but I've changed my mind, you know. But where it is a consensual decision, you can't pick out who said what and who said. You say the House has decided, University of Ghana has decided. Okay, as Santiman says. Why? Because the people who have created that will, this is where Rousseau is taking us to, consider themselves as one. So if the chief, for example, made the decision, they see themselves in their chief. That is why you will be amazed that sometimes the traditional lead, for example, will say we are going to do communal labor this Saturday, everybody should be there, and the majority of the people will be there. But where the people don't see themselves as part of the whole, they don't consider the decisions of the collective as theirs. So say sometimes the state will say we are going to do national cleaning and whatever day, and the people are not bothered. They're opening their shops and working because they don't identify with the whole. Rousseau's general will is possible where a collectively molded body politic, one being, has been created from the several. And it is not created by fiat. It's created by belongingness. The people should feel a sense of belonging to the whole, such that when we make the decision, we consider it as what? Our decision. I will ask you to assess, or even just to interrogate, to find out whether you think that Rousseau's general will applies in our context in Ghana here. And you would have to make your case whether you think it is the case or not, and why. And if it applies, does it apply at the national level or it applies at the traditional level? You know, or it applies in I don't know how you make your point, but do you think we see a sense of us, a collective us, one human person created out of several individuals, and therefore we make decisions that we believe affect all? Okay, Grace, read please.
Nature of the social contract. By the social contract, one loses his natural liberties and the unlimited rights to anything he wants and can get, but gains civil liberties and the proprietorship of all his properties, legal title.
Very good. Doesn't need further
Natural,
explanation. Go ahead.
Natural liberty is limited only by the strength of the individual. Civil liberty, on the other hand, is limited by the general will and is more stable.
It's more stable. So okay, I'm sure you understand that. Let me get your point. How is civil liberty more stable than natural liberty in Rousseau's social contract? Anyone? Anybody? Oh, my people, why? You want me to do all the talking? Why would you think that?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead, Nana Kofi Amo.
Thank you. I think the civil liberty more of the social contract, because the social contract allows the general rule to be a superseding factor when it comes to the will of the people instead of the overall will of the people. The general will is now considered rather than the total will of the people.
Okay, that is fine. Thank you very much. I wanted someone to touch on, look at this, what we said here. We said that natural liberty is limited only by the strength of the individual. Then the one that is highlighted, civil liberty, on the other hand, is limited by the general will and is more stable. Okay, we are saying that where we have liberties that are restricted by the general will, that is rather more stable than the natural one that is not restricted except by the strength of the individual. I'm trying to, it looks like, so for Rousseau, even though civil society restricts man's natural freedom, that is more stable, the stability with that, than with the natural one, which has no restriction, really. Okay, man is born free, but it's everywhere in chains. Born free naturally, but in civil society, everywhere man is in chains. Marriage, you can't do this, you can do that. What is it? School, you can't do this, you can do that. Church, you can't do this, you can do that. Even on the street, you can't drive when the traffic light says red. You see, too many restrictions everywhere in civil society, but naturally there aren't any. And then here we read that those kinds of restrictions are rather more stable, makes man's liberty more stable. And I want to see why that is so. Okay, can someone show? In other words, it looks like civil society, with all the change it brings, makes man's life meaningfully free than the other one. Yeah, I see two hands. I see Larry, Larry, and I see Bless. Let's take Bless Barney first, and I'll take Larry afterwards. Let's go ahead.
Hello.
I can hear you, Bless. Go ahead.
So please, I think that the reason why the civil one is more stable, civil liberty is more stable because all people have come to agree on a certain rule that should govern them. And if you go against, you'll be compelled to obey it. So there's more, you are guaranteed of your safety.
Excellent.
You're guaranteed of
Excellent.
your
Don't add more.
safety.
They will copy the rest. It's okay, Bless. Don't add again. So there is a guarantee, a certain degree of assuredness of what you are entitled to. So I told the City Campus folks when I met them earlier today, I said, we may be 600 students at the lecture hall. We are all trying to step out of those two small gates or doors out there to get to our next lecture. We all have a natural freedom, ability, capability, so to speak, to push our way through the door per our strength. Look on your screen, you see what the point is now. Now, the strong person is likely able to step on us and push us off and go. But even that strong person will meet with a lot of we, the tiny ones, we will all be squeezing our way through there because of what we naturally can do. It doesn't grant us a meaningful effect of the liberty we have. What we have naturally, we are capable of doing naturally, doesn't yield good outcomes. Why? Because then everyone is doing what they can without any rules. But if we have some regulation and we say, oh, those on the first line should go first, then those on the second line should go. We will all step out. It only means that the strong man will still be in the queue So it is his or her turn. But ultimately, we will get out. You see, so it is more stable. We don't get our phones lost. People don't have their wigs falling off because we are jumping in a hurry to go and get a seat. You see, so the liberties are restricted where we have a civilized way of doing things. When we have an organized way, regulated by law, it makes our what is the thing? Our freedoms that are now liberties more meaningful. It gives us a guarantee, a stable outcome of what freedom is supposed to set for us. So let that scenario guide you on what Rousseau is saying. That where we put rules, the rules help us to actualize our freedom. Otherwise, we have natural freedoms that generate chaos and there's no meaningfulness to our lives. Okay, let's have the next one. Sister, read the next one, Grace. Is it only Grace that is reading? There was another hand. Dick Benjamin, is there a question or you are going to respond? I'm sorry. Let me see if Dick has a feedback.
Please, I wanted to respond.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So did you want to add something other than what I've said? Then please go ahead.
No, please, you've said it all.
Hey, Brad Dikro, yes, sure. You okay? Thank you very much. Thank you for the effort. So let's take my sister finish this slide, then we can take someone else to read. Good.
In a civil state, man also acquires moral liberty, which makes him truly a master of himself, autonomous. So
Very good.
whoever
Please pause for a
refuses to
minute. I'm
obey the
sorry.
general will.
I'm sorry. Please pause for a minute. So it means that you could be a master of yourself, but not truly a master of yourself. Moral liberty, when it comes to right or wrong, you legislate for yourself and you obey rules that you set for yourself by reason. We'll see that with Wolf, Robert Paul Wolf. He brings it out a bit clearer. You are able to do certain things, but you tell yourself that, oh no, but this, I shouldn't do that. So you become autonomous. Autonomy means legislating rules for yourself and being the master of the rules that you set for your own self. Think of God. We think of God and say that he has exalted his word above his name. Okay, no one would arrest God if he decided that all of us should serve him overnight. But this is the understanding we have, that he doesn't want to have to decide for everyone. Okay, so he has bound himself by his own laws, self-rule, autonomous, guided and regulated by his own rules. So he's letting his rules guide him. That is what autonomy is, and he's made us like that, I think. Okay, so in a civil state, man does not only acquire what we call civil liberties, which is what restricted liberties, rules. You could have gotten up to come and give me a dirty slap just to feel free. You are capable of doing that. But you don't do it because you have legislated laws for yourself. That is the thinking behind it. That is what makes you different from the stone, different from the dog, different from the rice water that is on fire. You see how when the thing is being the heat coming out doesn't think about who it is standing there. It just hits left, right. If you are frying plantain, the hot oil just spits out like that and drops on your skin. Doesn't care where. Human beings are not like that. We are conscious. We are rational beings. We make choices, reasoned choices that we hold ourselves accountable to. So we could go on and on and on. These are just examples to make the point. Master of himself. You will see this again when we do Wolf, Robert Paul Wolf, and his discussion of the autonomous self. So whoever refuses to obey the general will shall be compelled to do so by the whole us. Though we are many, we are one body. We sing that song at church. Okay, it simply means we may be several individuals in the department, several individuals in that group. But when we come together, we form a collective whole. So there is no longer me, myself, and I detached from the rest. No, it is us. And therefore, if you are going wayward, we will force you to conform. Who are the we who conform? It's the collective us. You are maybe the ear and I am the mouth, and someone else is the nose. That has created a whole body politics called Ghana, called philosophy department, for example, called the church of so and so, called the marriage home. So we do not have the woman's account and then the man's account any longer. We have the family account. And therefore, if one is going wayward, we will push him in because he's part of the whole. Think of it that way, okay? Because doing so is what? Forcing him or her to be free. Now, the new body, public person that has been created, you take all of these from Hobbes, Locke, and we are now on Rousseau. So it's not anything new. The new public person, Hobbes will call the Commonwealth. We saw that with Locke also. Rousseau calls it the republic or the body politic, the new person. Sister, read that for us. After you, we can get Cynthia Kadri to read for us. Right.
The new public person. This new public person that is formed by the union of all other persons is called a republic or body politic. Its members call it a state when thinking of it as passive, a sovereign when thinking of it as active, a power when comparing it to others like itself.
So Ghana, Ghana, is a sovereign state. If you say it is a state, you're speaking of it passively. If it is acting in relation to others, you call it a sovereign. As soon as someone says this is a sovereign state, Ghana, it makes a claim on you. It means the person is activating the power it wills, the authority, I should say, the authority it wills as a collective self. You can't sit on their neck. Just like you think of the human person as being autonomous, he or she is supposed to make their choices for themselves. You can't impose it on them. If society agrees, society only imposes because it works for the individual person. We'll see how Wolf argues that. So sovereign, a sovereign state. I told your friends in the past when some other states wanted to impose a certain way of life on Ghanaians, the ex-president then, President Atamils of blessed memory, said, please tell that man that Ghana is a sovereign state. And after that, the pressure coming ceased, at least for a while, because our professor then, our president, there was a professor of law, he was activating something. We are a sovereign state. We own ourselves. You cannot impose things that we don't want. That is what how he silenced the folks then, okay? So when we are talking about this new body politic in as what? An active entity, an entity that acts as a collective self, it is sovereign. When we are talking about it as a passive entity, we say it is what? A state. Then when we compare it to others, like the way others tell us that they are superpowers, some to our powers, some are G8s, and some to our nobodies, then we refer to that same body politic as a what? A power. You'll see the same going on here on this slide. Our president tells us, current president tells us to be citizens, not spectators. Look at when he describes us as citizens, when we share in the sovereign power of the body politic, the republic. When you are sharing in it, you are a constitute, a component part. But he advocates, he's telling you, look, act, use that sovereign power that we have as a collective. Use it. So be a citizen, be a partaker of the rule, be a partaker of the sovereignty of the nation. There's a certain sovereign power that we will. Each person, as a member of this collective whole, should act as a citizen. Use that sovereign power to rule. Let us rule together, so to speak. That's what the president meant. Okay? At least that's what he said. Meaning it is another thing for us. Okay, we can diagnose that together. So see, we are collectively called the people. When we share in this ruling power, we are described as a citizen. And when the laws get us, or we are under the law, we are described as subjects. Okay, these are just terminologies to help you see that in the long run, we are ruling ourselves. That is how you should see what Rousseau is doing. You are the boss and you are the servant. You are the manager and you are the worker. You are the Look at democracy, the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. So you yourself are the boss, and you are the one that is ruled. By who? By yourself. Self-rule, autonomy, translated or transferred to the body politic. This is what Rousseau is advocating for. You might have seen that. That is why Rousseau favors what? People's sovereignty, the sovereignty of the people, not some one-man Leviathan or monarch, not even some few who can be brought in and out. No, all of us rule all of us. Finito. We all are ruling who? Ourselves. That is what Rousseau's emphasis is. And people think that he's making a case for what we would call democracy. Now, some even think a kind of democracy, a consensual kind of democracy, where we have decided to be what? Masters of who? Ourselves. And so if you read the last paragraph down there, so favors people's sovereignty. The moment a master exists, there is no longer a sovereign. As soon as you make one a master, otherwise a boss over the other, you do not have a sovereign any longer. The sovereign is us, the collective us. So think of you, as I said it earlier, as the ear of the new body politic. I may be the hand. Someone else may be the leg. Someone is a fingernail. So you see Ghana as one human being standing there, with all of us being what? The constituent parts. Nobody is boss over anybody. And from that moment that you create a master out of the body politic, it ceases to exist, says Rousseau. Any questions? I already mentioned the group word. Any questions? Then we can go to Taylor. As for Taylor, you are coming to tell me what you read. I had a good time with City Campus. Is there any question? No, is yours a question? No, it's to read. Okay. Anita, please, if it's a question, kindly ask. I see Anita's hand, and then Nana.
Okay, Doc. Doc, please, I want to ask the difference between communitarianism and collectivism.
What do you think?
I think they are the same. Oh.
Okay, they are not necessarily the same. One is a social, like a political view of how society is organized. Okay, collectivism is more a description of what is going on, but not all communitarians argue for collectivism. I think you should just look it up. When you say collectivism, it's as if you are saying we have one mind, we think the same way collectively. Okay, so collectivism doesn't necessarily represent communitarian, and the communitarian argument ultimately says that give equal standing. Some say give equal standing. Some say give a biased emphasis to community and its and relationality and relatedness. Let's emphasize that over and above individuality and rights and autonomy and whatever. That's it. It doesn't necessarily mean that people think in the same way. We have a collective thought. So you can look it up and see collectivism. The ism is where the issue is. One is describing, it's almost derogatory to say that people think collectively. So we are like goats or sheep following the shepherd. When you say everybody sit down, we all sit, that cannot be what communitarianism is saying. Okay. All right. Can I take the next question? Is that Apia Kubi? Benjamin, go ahead, Apia Kubi.
Yeah, Doc, please. I wanted to know whether we should obey the state or the state should obey its citizens.
What do you think?
Hello, Doc.
What do you think, sir? I heard you. I'm asking you what you think. You don't like it when I bring the question back to you, eh? I want to know what you think, then I can react.
Okay, so the Rousseau's definition for social contract. So for me, the state should obey its citizens.
Okay, I've heard you. The state should obey its citizens. What constitutes the state then? What is the state then? So that the state can now go and obey its citizens. In Rousseau's terms, the citizens That's the actual, individuals that come together to form the collective are the same. So think of democracy, the rule of all by all. How do you people say it? What is democracy? Democracy is what? Self-rule.
Yeah, the rule of
A
all.
government, yes, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Yeah.
So the government itself is constituted by the people. It is the people that are the government. Who are they ruling? They are ruling themselves. So that who benefits? So that they themselves benefit. This is what Rousseau is pushing for. That is, I saw that in Saturday's voting at the MPP Congress, Delegates Conference, something. The people were sovereign. the ordinary grassroots decided. They made a choice. You know, I was told, I didn't follow it much, but I was told that some of the big men and women, the regional chairpersons and what have you, were whipping people into line, showing where they should vote according to whatever, you see. But the grassroots said no. So see what has happened. It's amazing. What's the point? The people rule. Of course, the chairman and what have you are part of the people. But the point we are making here is, it isn't like there are some bosses somewhere who call the shots and everybody toes the line. If you were doing Rousseau says there is no master. We all are the masters of ourselves, ruling ourselves for the benefit of ourselves. If you need to. That is the posture he wants to project. Okay, so the state will then be constituted by the people. And the people, when they are actively engaging others, is what will make them what? Citizens. They are using part of the state's, part of the state's authority or sovereignty, then they will be what? Considered as citizens. If you now address them as the collective whole, then you will know them to be either the power, a sovereign, or the state. Okay. So that is how I will answer you. How we can work towards that place where even if the king made a decision for us, because we identify with the king, we'll say we made that decision. If we went to a meeting and we had to decide on whether Ghana is going to do free SHS or Ghana is going to do health or water or what have you, after the meeting, maybe 98 people said yes and 12 people said no. When we come out, it's all of us said yes. It's a collectively made decision. There's no distraction, because when we identify as a whole, then even if it is part of us that made the decision, all of us made that decision. Okay, and that is how Rousseau wants us to go. Nana Kofi, I see your hand up. Please ask your question. And then we can go to Taylor quickly.
Okay, thank you, Doc. My question is with regard to the existence of a master. We've been told that when there's a master, there's no longer a sovereign. And earlier on, we established the fact that individuals ought to be compelled to submit to the general. So I wanted to find out,
By
wouldn't
the
there be a
whole.
need?
Compelled by the whole.
Compelled
Okay.
by
the whole.
The whole, yeah.
Not some specific person. Okay, so the collective us will drive the other person along. So think of your body like this. Maybe you want to sleep, your eyes want to sleep, but the whole system knows that you must be at the lecture hall now. The whole body will wake up and pull the eye along. So the eye is closing, but we are going for the lecture. Sort of, think of it that way. So that compulsion is not coming from any one of us who is the master. It is a collective us. Asante Maya Hemani say, Ochi Maya Hemani say, hey, Ghana, this is me, my Ghana. Then we all hold hands to ensure that the deviant follows suit. So here it is not one person or one entity made the power, made us to look like what? The Leviathan, the monarch, the champion, who calls the shot and silences all of us. No, it is a collective us, ensuring that no one deviates from what we have collectively agreed. That is what the philosophy that Rousseau is pushing. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anta, you're welcome. Anta, go ahead. If it's a question, if not, then we read Taylor. Then I'll set it up. How many of you read Taylor quickly? If Anta has a question. Anta, ask your question. What's your accent? Let me see those who engage the Taylor paper.
Madam, Doc, please, it's a mistake.
Oh, okay. I saw your hand. That's why.
Okay.
Right. I see your hand up. Someone's hand is up. It's an ID. Okay. Bless. Please, can you keep your IDs
Hello,
discreet?
Doc.
Those who do numerology, they like to see your IDs. So they will chant you. Keep your IDs. Keep your IDs discreet. Just put your full name, maybe. Okay. Right. Go ahead.
Okay, Doc, it's Enoch. Sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
My question is that what is the assurance that J.J. Rousseau gives concerning to the general? Because for a fact, getting people along to deliberate on something, I think it's a very complicated action, because human
You are so
beings,
right,
we have
You are so right.
selfish interest.
Yes. You are so right. So Rousseau's point really is ensure that you have a collective self. You see, the people must identify. I was giving the example with our president may say that, oh, this coming Saturday, every Ghanaian should lock their shops. Let's sweep our neighborhood. Let's make sure that there's people who do not identify with the collective whole called Ghana. There's one thing saying, me, my Ghana, and this, we are one people of one, that's talk. Then there's the actuality of it. You see, if people actually identify with the whole and we have created a collective self, then it's easy to achieve what Rousseau is saying. There are people who haven't been in Ghana for 20 years or so, but if you speak against Asante or any traditional leader that they identify with, they see themselves as, say, Asante or Achim. He might not even be in Ghana, but he feels associated, or Arab. Let's use Arab friends. You see, he or she can get so offended because the person identifies with the whole. And Rousseau is saying when we have that, where people see themselves as members of that whole, that is when we can have a general will. And yes, it will just be a will of all, not really a general will. Look at people who are very associated with, say, their church or their political party or something. How they defend this guy who is talking all over the place. I'm told it's called something Jonas. He's insulting everybody, I'm told, on social media. People who have never met the Asante or any chief or president or something go and pour libation that they are cursing this guy for speaking against, say, so and so king or chief. You see, because the person speaking identifies with Ebia Ochiman. You see, Ochiman, say, we will not watch for Ochiman to go. The person identifies with a self called what Ochiman. Eh? Recently, I heard of a certain quote and unquote or bantam, so to speak, between two of our venerable chiefs in Ghana or Kens. Okay. People had a sense of belonging to the Bono king or chief, and others had that sense of belonging to the Asante king. Do we have same for, say, Africa or Ghana? To the extent that if one says there will be communal labor this Saturday, everybody will close their shops. Your neighbor will tell you, now there another say we'll be able to shop. Everybody will be each other's keeper. What about if the national state or the head of state also says same? People open their shops. That day cry the day they will sell more. So I agree with you, Enoch, that it will be difficult to talk the general will if there is no self-body politic created where people identify with a certain collective. If they do, then even if it was only one person that made a decision, they will see it as their decision. Our king said it, so it is our decision. And that is how people are able to follow others sometimes to go for war. They go and they fight before they start asking, what are we fighting about? Because they might have not interrogated it. So that is very important point that you've made, whether we can talk of the general will at all, if there is no collective whole body politic created where people identify as one. Thank you so much. Let's take a. Okay, so all the hands went down now. Now let me hear from those who read Taylor. Let me see what you read. Then I can take you through some of the slides. Hey, I said the slide, the textbook itself quickly. I didn't say those who understood everything that Taylor said. I said those who read it. Those who read the text. Kindly put your hand up. Let me see if we got a good number that read it. don't spend too much time on that quickly. I want to see those who, I'm not going to ask you to say anything. I want to know those who made an attempt at you looking at the text so that I know how to engage the class. Only 2 people out of 166. Keep the hands up, please. I'm collating because City Campus had a bigger number relative to the class size than that. No, 10 is still not good. It's not good. You didn't read. Hey, I'll let you write a critical summary and submit tomorrow.
We are 4.
13, no, it's still not good. I'm not saying lie about it. I know you are people of integrity, but I want to see those who made an attempt at looking at the paper. I sent it as a PDF as well when your friend Augustine came by to help us do it. 16, 10%, not too good, not too good. What happened to the rest of the class? You didn't see it or you were too overwhelmed? You didn't make an attempt, even the introduction. Oh, it is not too good though. When we do that, we will not progress fast. Some of the readings are supposed to be general research paper. Like next week, the ones I'm giving to you for group work, I just wanted you to go and read it. Then I'll use some 30 minutes to touch on it for you to see the case they make for civil disobedience for Martin Luther. Then the other gentleman, Socrates' paper, why he will not obey the state, even if the laws are not properly handled. He will still obey the law. He doesn't want to contravene the law or undermine it because of the implications thereof. Okay, I'll just show that in 30 minutes and would have been done. Then we delve more onto, but if you don't have the posture of reading, we'll struggle. Okay, 15, the 18 graph, 4 of them have dropped their hands. Hey, Brian and Sister Adwa. Okay, let's hear you on what you read. Anybody wants to tell us what they read, what they make of the paper on atomism? You can contrast it with what you saw in the Miles paper as well. I think if you did the Miles paper, then it helps you get some clarity on what this communitarianism, individualism debate is all about. Anybody, you can just unmute and talk. There are 10 of you, so any one of you can unmute and respond. What did you see in Taylor, please? Who can I call? Anthony Yao. And Yao, Anthony, do you want to set the ball rolling for us? Or Esther Ukule? Priscilla J's hand is also up. Any one of you? Tell us what you read in
Okay,
Taylor.
Doc.
Thank you, sir. That's Nana Kofi. Go ahead.
Okay. Mine is more of a criticism concerning the definition that Taylor gives for atomism, whereas he defines atomism as a theory that prioritizes individual rights over society within a certain
you go ahead.
construct of human nature. Okay, so with regard to that, we've also realized that man is not an island. That is, we are interdependent. We need each other. So for you to prioritize individual rights.
I'm sorry, who are you critiquing now, Nana Kofi?
Yes, please, Nana.
Who are you critiquing? I want to follow your. Okay, so let's hear you on what you think Taylor has said, so that we can now get your critique of him.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Okay, sure. So okay. Taylor's conception of atomism, which is a theory whereby the individual rights are prioritized over society. Yes. So my criticism is his definition.
Is he the one saying that? Just a minute. Is he the one saying that, or he's criticizing others for saying that? That's what I'm trying to help you see.
Okay, so he's the one who conceived atomism.
Okay, no. So he doesn't, he is not an atomist. He's rather criticizing some people for being atomists. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yes, and he has a problem with that. And that is what I want to help us see, so that we don't misconstrue what you say. So we'll do that together, okay, in a minute. And then the criticism perhaps will be correctly directed, perhaps to those who say that and not to him. Okay, all right. Just a minute, we'll get to the content proper shortly. Let's hear Anthony Yao. Tebi Ariba. Anthony, do you want to comment on what you read on Taylor? And now we set us off nicely. He shows us something, but I thought he wanted to critique Taylor for it, but Taylor is rather criticizing others for that. So when we clarify that, then the challenge he has with them will come out clearly. You want to also comment? The name I see here is Joseph. and I'm a bit worried about calling first names. Joseph, go ahead. If you could put your full name, it helps for the records, okay?
Okay, Doc, me.
This is Joseph who?
This is Joseph Anderson.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, so so I'm reading on his paper on atomism.
Yeah.
The whole idea of he was trying to build was that he was trying to say that atomism affirms that man can be self-sufficient alone. But he also went on to say that aside that he actually needs, aside him being self-sufficient, you actually need the society, because without the society, he can't develop his human capacities.
Excellent. Excellent. That is the thrust of Taylor's argumentation. And so Taylor, I'm sorry, but because of the feedback we are having, I've had to take it up and continue. But you set us off well, so thank you very much, Joseph. So Taylor wants to make a whole point. The whole point he's making is we cannot talk about the human person as if he or she is what detached from human society. That human beings have rights, autonomy, freedoms that can be calculated without a commensurate recognition of what? Society, belongingness, responsibility. He says that is problematic. That is problematic. This is the whole issue that Taylor is trying to work out. And it is an agenda to criticize what he feels is being done wrongly. So I think we are at a good place to set off. I will navigate the text with you together. It's a philosophical content, so it's not straightforward, sir. I'll navigate with you, and then afterwards, when you do your analysis, it will be easier for you. Can I have a good reader now? Thank you very much, everyone. Can I have a good reader now to take us through the reading of the content? Okay. I see Cynthia's hand now. I see. Okay, Bright was first, but let's take Cynthia. Afterwards, I'll take now. Cynthia, go ahead. Cynthia Katu.
Atomism.
Yes,
Charles
Cynthia.
Taylor. I would like to examine the issue of political atomism, or at least to try to clarify what this issue is. I want to say what I think atomist doctrines consist in, and to examine how the issue can be joined around them. This is how they might be proved or disproved, or at least cogently argued for or against, and what in turn they may be used to prove.
Very good. Hold on for a minute. So the gentleman sets off and tells you clearly what he wants to do. That's how you write philosophy. So when you are reading a philosophical text, you read it that way. Otherwise, you will impute things to people that they haven't said. And you may go criticizing the person for something that he hasn't said. In fact, the person may be agreeing with you. What did our friend say he's going to do? Charles Taylor has a paper that he has titled Atomism. He sets up, look at the beginning of the paper, no embellishment. He says, I would like to examine the issue of political atomism. That's what I want to do. Examine, shake it, open it out. Examine means, if I'm going to examine you, it means I'm going to ask you questions that will test your knowledge of the content. So I'm going to shake that theory called political atomism. That means it is not his view. He's going to question that view. Or at least, he says, even if I won't be able to question it or shake it, I'll at least try to clarify what this issue is. Because some people don't see that they are arguing like atomists. They don't see it. And I, Taylor, want to show them that that is what they are doing. They are also doing this wrong thing, sort of, okay? So he says, if I don't examine it, in other words, betray its inadequacies, at least there is one thing that I can do. I'll clarify what this issue is. Then it goes further to say, I want to say what I think atomist doctrines consist in. What is that view that he calls atomist? And then I'll examine how the issue can be joined around them. So various authors are speaking, and I think that they are all saying this thing that I find problem with. But some of them don't even admit that that is what they are doing. Okay? Or at least cogently argued for or against, and what in turn they may be used to prove or disprove. Very good. So that is his first paragraph. If that is not clear enough, look at the second paragraph too. Sister, go ahead.
The term atomism is used loosely to characterize the doctrine of social contract theory, which arose in the 17th century, and also successor doctrines which may not have made use of the notion of social contracts, but which inherited a vision of society as in some sense constituted by individuals for the fulfillment of ends which were primarily individual.
You have to take note of this paragraph. I think you are reading well. Very good, because it is King James kind of language. I didn't do it, I didn't went. Thou shall I, So it's difficult to read it coherently, but the lady is doing well. Take note of what he calls atomism. He is labeling them as such. He's critiquing folks that argue, and he's referencing what? The 17th century social contract theorists. We have seen them, some of them, 3 of them. We haven't done Rawls, but from the way this man is speaking, even Rawlsian thinking, some aspects of even Kantianism can be criticized for this. So he's labeling all of them atomists. What does he mean? That is the view that tries to pursue rights, autonomy, what's the other one? Freedoms, uniqueness, etc. These are all supposed to be attributes of the individual. So that view that seeks the individual, his right, his autonomy, his freedoms, etc., without, take note, without an equal moral status for what? Community and belongingness. And what's the other one? And responsibility and obligation towards community. You do rights, autonomy, freedoms without giving equal recognition and equal moral status, you see, to community, belongingness, obligation to society, etc. If you don't do them equally, Charles Taylor says you are then committing a crime that he calls what? Atomism. Speaking in a way that you can grasp. You are getting something wrong. You are treating the human being as an atom. You are treating human being as if they were atoms. What's an atom? The smallest indivisible part of matter that can exist on its own without any relational ties, so to speak. So he says, but that is faulty. That is not how human beings are. Human beings are not stones. Human beings have a natural belonging. So when we get ahead, I'm saying some of the things, when I take you through the paper, you see the points there. Human beings are naturally social. They are naturally political beings. That means they are born into society. They don't choose society. They are born into one. Maybe when you grow, you can decide to move from one to the other. But even to move from one to the other, you have a certain starting point. You are born into one. Onipa frisru besia, obesi onipa krum. When the human being descends from above, this is Kwame Jachi and Ray would have quoted. So if you read the communitarian authors, a reference in the mouse paper I gave you, then you will see that I'm putting all those ideas together to help you now. The communitarians' heartbeat is, look, you people are being extremely individualist. You are leaving out essential parts of belongingness, obligation. There has to be a social fabric within which your rights are meaningful, etc., etc. So the communitarian critique of individualism was to make the individualists give some space to community. But in doing so, they also err, because sometimes they argue to the point that they diffuse the individual of all uniqueness, creativity, ingenuity, right? You say we can't say I. We can't say I. It is only we. Sometimes we Africans do that. And I think I did that with you level 100. When you ask him, so when are we going to get our results? So we will see to it that everything is done. And meanwhile, the person speaking is the only one who will work on it. Instead of saying, I will see to it. It sounds a bit immodest and out of place to be saying, I will make sure that my government said this. And people will say, hey, this guy is too low. Look at the way he's talking. I, me, myself. It's an African thing. We want to always speak we. So sometimes we overly subject individuality to what? The community. So that is the problem that the communitarians will have. That is the problem that the pessimist has. with communitarians. The pessimist feels that the communitarian will also submerge the individual so much into community to the point of non-retrieval. So I'm showing you what is happening in Taylor. Then I shift to the critique that the pessimist paper that I gave you have, so that you don't think that Taylor is also communitarian. He's not arguing communitarian as in the African communitarian thinkers are doing. So let's roll back to where we are now. What are we doing? We are trying to understand atomism, which is what? A problem. It is not something Taylor subscribes to. It is something he sees wrong with how some thinkers are thinking. And he starts from what? The social contract theories that we have seen, from Hobbes to Locke to the others. He will mention them in a jiffy. But even furthermore, to say that it's not only them, but others like them whose views are what? Like successor doctrines, those that followed after them, who also argue the same way. All right. My lady, please read certain forms of utilitarianism.
Certain forms of utilitarianism are successor doctrines in this sense. The term is also applied to contemporary doctrines which hark back to social contract theory, or which try to defend in some sense the priority of the individual and his rights over society, or which present a purely instrumental view of society.
Instrumental view of society means they think of society, well, yeah, it's useful. Yeah, community is useful only to the extent that it will benefit the individual. Its usefulness is purely measured in terms of how beneficial society is to the human person, the individual. So society in itself is not beneficial, it's not useful unless it benefits the individual. That's an instrumental view of society. Taylor says that's problematic. You think that's for society there is just a matter of option. Let me give you a typical example. Whatever I'm doing, for society, or whatever obligations I owe to society, is only insofar as that obligation ultimately benefits the person. That is what is happening with our social contract theories. Check. I am consenting to agree to join to form human society only because of what I'll get from it. If I go and the deal is not good, I am allowed to retract and go. Taylor says, who says that is how actual human society is? They're talking gibberish. Actual human society is such that you, the human person, that individual who came with rights, you have come to demand right and entitlement. Before you were born into an existing society. This is what is happening on the third page there. So let's go quickly. We'll come back to where sister is. But I'm showing you so that if you did some reading, now they are falling into place. Excuse me. The page that he tells you, see, how can we formulate this view? This is where I am, page 32. He says, perhaps the best way is to borrow the terms of the opposed thesis, those who are not atomists. The view that man is a social animal. One of the most influential formulations of this view is Aristotle's. He puts the point in terms of the notion of self-sufficiency. Man is a social animal, indeed, a political animal, because he's not self-sufficient alone. And in an important sense, is not self-sufficient outside a police. Man depends on others. That is where our friend was getting to, but he thought he was criticizing Taylor. Though Taylor is rather showing those he labeled as what? Atomists, that look, I call you atomist because you are arguing as if the human person is self-sufficient alone. The point is, before you were even born, you are born into a polis. You are born a social animal. Two people who already belong to an epoch, a civilization, a cultural setting, are those that come together to give birth to you. So you come into the world and you find systems and structures that make your rights meaningful at all. And therefore, it isn't like we had human beings, persons, sitting isolated one from the other. Then one day they decided to constitute human society. That is a wrong starting point, says Taylor. And if you start from there, then you will make society, state, whatever you want to label it, however you want to label it, society, state, community. You will make it look like it's optional to the human person, but it is not. In fact, they have equal moral standing. Okay, so you can't call Taylor immediately a communitarian. Some label him as such. He's better labeled as what? A liberal. He's balancing the curves. So he doesn't want you to go extremely individual, doesn't want you to go extremely community. He wants you to ensure that each has what? Equal moral standing. If you got that too, then you know why an instrumental view of society will be reprehensible to what? Taylor. Who Taylor say are arguing about society in an instrumental way. They are thinking of society as a means to an end, which people will Taylor label as such. Those he calls what? Atomists, who also do what? Who emphasize the primacy of right. Sister, read, please. I think I'm talking too much. Read now.
Of course, any term loosely used in political discourse can be defined in a host of ways, and perhaps one should even leave out of philosophical discourse altogether those terms which tend to be branded as epithets of condemnation in the battle between different views. One might well argue that atomism is one such because it seems
It's
to
one
reveal
such. Yeah, it's one such term. In other
such.
words, one might think of atomism, the word atomism, as one of such terms which are normally condemned by folks when they are debating. So that even those who are committing that crime will not like it when you label them as atomists. They'll say, no, I'm not being atomist. I haven't argued for atomism. But then Taylor's point is they may be saying we haven't done that, but how they are presenting their argument make an assumption of what? Atomism. So he mentions Nozick and tells us that Nozick would prefer to be called an individualist. But he will say, I'm not arguing atomistically. Why? Because the label atomism is such obviously, unpleasant when you say that someone is arguing as if human beings are self-sufficient. But he says, perhaps I'm dealing with the wrong term. But there is a central issue in political theory, which is eminently worth getting at under some description. And perhaps the best way of getting at it is this. Now take note, what I'm calling atomist doctrines underline the 17th century revolution in the terms of normative discourse, which we associate with the names of what? Hobbes and Locke. Please remember that always, Hobbes and Locke. The two central, you see that I didn't add Rousseau. When you look at our discussion of Rousseau today, even though he is also advocating a social contract here, he is talking about us. So ultimately, we enter into a contract with ourselves and we ensure that we obey our own laws for ourselves, for our own benefit. But Hobbes and Locke make it the individual entering into a contract for the sake of the individual, such that if the individual thinks, that is in the case of Locke, if the individual thinks the contract is not working, he or she is allowed to break away and go. So our friend has picked on Hobbes and Locke to make his point. Let's have another reader. Thank you very much, Cynthia. You did well. I'll take the names are 111. That's not helpful. I don't like calling one named. So Nana Obeng, please read from what is there. These writers and others who are presented, go ahead from there.
These writers and others who presented social contract views have left us a legacy of political thinking in which the notion of right plays a central part in the justification of political structures and action. The central doctrine of this tradition is an affirmation of what we could call the primacy of right.
Very good. So
Theories
that
which
is also, just a minute. So that is also not Taylor's view. He's still bringing out a certain view that he wants to critique. He labels it as atomism. Then as he proceeds, he says, even those who are committing this crime that I see, they don't call themselves atomists. When you call them atomists, they say we haven't committed that crime. They prefer labels like individualists. But these people that I am labeling atomists do something in common. What do? They affirm the primacy of right. The primacy of right. Primacy means making it primary, making it first, making it basic, most important. Okay? So these theorists emphasize rights, primacy of rights. Not just their emphasis on the primacy of rights, but they do something, they do it to the detriment, to the disregard, to the denial of what? An equal moral standing for what? Obligations towards society. That is the problem. So you are just respecting one side of the human person and overlooking a very important side of the human person, both of which make the being of the human person. You see, I went ahead to show you. One is naturally a member of society. You are your mother's son. You didn't choose that. Your biological mother. You are your father's son. When you grow up, you may change mothers and foster parents or what have you, but whoever gave birth to you, it's not a choice you made. You are naturally that. You are born into a society, groomed by it. You ate the kind of food that the society calls food. That's what you ate. Who respects a snake meat on food? But if you were groomed there, you eat it. Maybe when you grow up, they say, oh, now I'm a vegetarian or something like that. Okay. So you have a whole system, a whole social structure that you were born into, language that makes your options meaningful. And then what your friend said earlier, these are what helps to develop your potential as a human being, properly human, not just human, but properly human. Is groomed and framed by a social context, a communal context. This is the point Taylor is making. So you cannot take a part of the human being to define the person and leave the other part and say, oh, that part there is optional. Just as rights, just as rights, autonomy, freedoms are natural to your being as a human being. Relationality, communality, belongingness, respect for the welfare of others is also natural to your being. This is the starting point of his debate. The only problem that Miles has with that is the language that is being used by Taylor. If you will clarify it and present it as I'm presenting now, communality, individuality, etc., then it captures the discussion better. Otherwise, then we'll have problems. So that is what you are seeing in the Miles paper as well. Okay, so we roll back. Trying to skew the discussion and focus on only one side of the human person and emphasize rights as primary without a commensurate regard for community is what Taylor calls what the primacy of rights thesis, which he says if your philosophical doctrine emphasizes the primacy of rights without equal recognition for community and its welfare, then you are being what? An atomist. This is what he's doing. Okay. Go ahead, please. Theories which are set.
Theories which assert the primacy of right are those which take the fundamental, or at least a fundamental, principle of their political theory, the ascription of certain rights to individuals, and which deny the same status to a principle of belonging or obligation. That is, a principle which states our obligation as meant to belong to a sustained society or society of a certain type, or to obey authority, or an authority of a certain type. Primacy of right theories, in other words, accept a principle ascribing right to men as binding unconditionally, binding that is on men such, but they do not accept as similarly unconditional a principle of belonging or obligation.
Let me
Rather,
explain, my lady. So it's the same thing I've said over and over again. Those who propound the theory that Taylor is labeling as what primacy of right theories are those that according to Taylor, he says, these are the people I call the primacy of right theorists, who are atomists. See that? They're atomists in the way they are presenting their theories. Whether they like it or not, this is what they are doing. And if they are doing this, then I call them atomists, not just individualists. Individualists may just be saying emphasize rights of individuals and give only small room to community per se. That is not it. He says that as for the atomists, the way they are arguing, they don't make any room for look at the language, for what? Relationality. They talk about human persons as if they don't have relations, as if they don't have obligations to other persons. You, the right you want to enjoy. that right must be the obligation of someone else. Someone must provide you that right. To that person, to be an obligation they owe you, so that you will enjoy that as a right. In the same way, someone's rights will be delivered if you feel obliged to present that. So it is going hand go, hand come. If you are a child, you have a certain right to something, maybe a right to free water, right to education, right to food, etc. That is why the father or the mother has an obligation towards that child. So if we talk only rights and we don't give a commensurate regard for obligations, then people will only be pursuing their right as individuals. I have a right to this, I have a right to that. When I join society and I'm not getting my right, well, then I exit. So the mother goes and changes her face to a goat because she has a right to change her face and look how she wants to look. But you see that as you pursue that right, you could be interfering with what? Your child's right to what? A mother, which you have an obligation to deliver to that child. This is the point Taylor is making. They come, honey, the children didn't choose their mother. You brought them. So you have relational obligations, you have what? Social ties, you have responsibilities towards society. You cannot enter the lecture hall in your bikini because you are feeling hot or you think your ties look nice to you. What about the other person who has an entitlement to a free, uninterrupted lecture delivery? Imagine the lecturer comes to the lecture hall. I'm a female lecturer, I was telling your friends. My class has males, even if they are all females. Nobody said they want to come and watch video. There are places to watch that. So I cannot come to the lecture hall and say, the room is too hot. It's too hot. Then I take off my shirt and I'm still teaching you, what's the name of this guy? Taylor. I take off my shirt because I have a right to. I have to feel obligated to respect other people's rights, which is what? My obligation to, so that we have a cohesive society that sustains us and gives meaning to what? Our various rights. Okay, so rights will come with obligation. This is the point Taylor is trying to make. But he says the starting point is the problem. If we start talking about society as if it's always eggs that are trying to grow to become chickens, we'll have a problem. Perhaps the starting point is rather a chicken. He doesn't even go into those. Who is the, what is prior to the other? It is a communitarian thinker that say, oh, first there was society, then individuals came from it. So first is human society, which produces human beings. Others say, no. Human beings will have to come together to create society in the first place before they can blah, blah, blah. So the chicken and egg scenario. The point is, before you ask for rights, the rights that work in the Sharia law at Saudi Arabia is not the same right that work in the 10 Commandments that are practiced, say, somewhere else, or in Ghana's constitution. That should tell you that the rights are contextualized. What is meaningfully accessible to you here in Ghana, based on our laws and our operations, may not, I said may not be the same as what pertains somewhere. So we are talking rights of the individual, right, autonomy, freedom to do this, freedom to do that. Taylor says you have to make sure that it is placed within a context. Otherwise, the rights are empty. There is nothing to deliver to you. Okay, so this is what he's dealing with, and he's calling those who propose that what primacy of right theorists who are arguing in an atomistic way. Why? Because they are not giving due recognition. In fact, the recognition should be equal for both individual and what? Community. This is what Taylor says. I have few questions to ask him. No matter, this looks very good, but I have some questions to ask. So if you look at the paper, or it reacts to Taylor, it reacts to our communitarian friends and also some individualist friends from both Western and African context. You will find it useful for your build-up. Okay, so sister, when you read all the way here, I think that I've said all of this. Please finish up that paragraph, then we can move on. I want to see if I still need to add anything.
Okay. Rather, our obligation to belong to or sustain a society or to obey its authorities is seen as derivative, as laid
Excellent.
on us conditionally through our consent or through it being to our advantage. The obligation to belong um, the obligation to belong is derived in certain conditions from the more fundamental principle which ascribes rights. The, para- the paradigm of primacy of right theories is plainly that of Locke, but there are contemporary theories of this kind. One of the best known in recent years being that of Robert Nozick. Nozick too makes the assertion of right to individuals fundamental and then proceeds to discuss whether and in what conditions we can legitimately demand obedience to a state. Primacy of right theories have been
Please
one
ignore
of
that. Thank you. Ignore that. Let's move ahead. This is striking because it tells you how the influence that the primacy of right thesis has had to the point, all that. So these are just elaborations. You should read and fill in those gaps. I want to show you the main things. But the question Taylor has with these people is, why do we even begin to find it reasonable to start a political theory with an assertion of individual rights? And to give these primacy, why should we start with the assertion of rights? When human beings are not just right-bearing, now that is Miles's paper down here, but they are also what? Obligation-bounded human beings, if there is anything like that. We are at once bearers of rights and also what? Obligatory people. We are people that have obligations to others necessarily. That is how we are natural. We are not stones which will not care. And so I showed you this on your screen. I showed you the primacy of rights. Starting the problem the guy has with primacy of rights when he argues that man is a social being and a member of a polis naturally. So it is in our nature to be so. And keep looking. I'm scrolling. I don't want us to do all the 22 pages. You will now be able to get the thrust of the whole paragraph that follow. He's trying to build on what has been said. I'm showing you the main points that the paper is trying to communicate. Then it makes sense to you. See where his starting point is. That is where he's going. So he tells you the thing I said about if we say you have a right to something, then it is because of what you are that entitles you to that right. The chairs at the lecture hall do not have a right to anything. They can't go to court that different people are sitting on us. Some come and push us down. Chairs don't have that because essentially they are not right-bearing. So that is what is going on in this paragraph. He uses all that to show man is not self-sufficient alone. Your being doesn't make you only right-bearing. You naturally depend on others to live a fulfilled life called a life of a human being. Okay. See that to the left, they have used the ink to write some things that the rights are for humans and not trees or tables, for example. Okay, that's what I'm saying there. Because of our nature, even idiots have it, just that it might have interrupted with. So far as they are human beings, they will have that right. Okay. Okay. So rights cannot be detached from the context. I said all this. Look on your screen now. I gave you examples: Sharia law, Ghana's law, America's law. The laws are not the same. Okay. So if you are properly human, you are defined by your context, society, and your natural capacities that you have to thought, to write, etc. So it is a two-way affair, all of them coming together to create your being. To be properly human is to have rights, freedoms, etc. Yes, that's individuality, but also to belong. You have to have obligations. You have to have communal ties. You can't be a hermit. Human beings are not like that. And if you make choices, look on your screen, then there must be options that makes choices meaningful. Okay. And if those choices won't hang in the air, they will depend on the social context for them to be meaningful. See that? That is why you have an obligation on your screen now, please, ought to belong or to sustain a society where your rights are made meaningful for your own self as a human being. All right. Still on your screen. That is why you have an obligation to belong. Those who have not looked at the text at all, now I hope that some things are making sense to you. Okay, you can't have an instrumental view of society, according to Taylor. I say Taylor, according to Taylor, explain with vivid examples why you agree or disagree with him. Then the mark there can be 15. You should be able to do that. Okay. Now, all these are elaborations. Then we come here. But in asserting our rights to the point of destroying the society, we should be depriving all those who follow after us of the exercise of the same capacity. So I gave you an example. You can't exercise your right to the detriment, friends, of what? The community that makes that right meaningful. And here again, Miles's paper throws some light. We can't think of a specific community. That's why Miles emphasizes what? Communality. Because I may be Ghanaian, but I may belong also to the community of Christians, community of women, community of academia, community of Africans, and at the same time, community of Ghana. So if you make community a specific place, then we'll have a problem. We won't be able to defend that. This is in reaction to those who think of community in a geographical sense of it. So now the paper makes some sense to you. Okay, you can argue for communality, that is relationality. So it's always in relation to something. The human person has individuality and communality, and both must be respected in making these social and political decisions. Okay, let's move quick. Yeah, some pretend. All these are elaborations. Okay, when you read them, they should fall in place now. Being capable. Okay, it's all defining the being of man. Very good. If we have any question, please raise your hand. I'll take it. I'm just walking you through the text so that those who need help with it, I think most of you do, will see the point. Okay. We can go on and on and on and on. So I'm arguing that the free individual of the West is only what he or she is by virtue of the whole society and civilization which brought him to be and which nourishes him. I've said all this already. That our families can only form us up to this capacity and these aspirations because they are set in this civilization. All these are points to Ortega. Why do I keep saying Ortega? I'm teaching level 200 Ortega, so it keeps interfering. Friends, I'm saying that. So society here, which Taylor is emphasizing, comes from family to civilization to an epoch to a context. All of these constitute a part of the person's being, okay, and not just their capacity of choice or their freedoms or their autonomies. Okay. All right. Now I can have someone read for us. Let's read somewhere getting to the last portion there. I think that we have made a point. A human subject. Almost done. Give me some few minutes. Let me find something that is relevant. Okay, so let's read from here. We are on page 21 now. We can read from, that's the thesis just sketched about the social conditions of freedom. I have someone read from there quickly. Let's have who was reading, please? Who was reading earlier?
Nana.
Let me have,
Nana.
so let's have our beta now. Nana, thank you very much. Let's have our beta now, okay? Thank you, Nana. Yeah, you end yourself a mark. Abeta, please go ahead if you're reading. Is Abeta there? That's the thesis just sketched. That's where we are. If Abeta is not able to, Daniel, read for us, please. Hey, who is there? Then Nana will read. Oh, don't tell me that I'm partial.
Bright is here.
Go ahead, Bright. Thank you very much.
Please, can I read, Doc?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Bright.
Please, Enoch, not Bright.
Oh, okay. The name there is Bright, so it's Bright. I see. Enoch, is that
Yes,
getting watching?
please.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Enoch.
please. I'm reading the phone. That's the theories just sketched about the social conditions of freedom is based on the notion, first, that developed freedom requires a certain understanding of self, one in which the aspiration to autonomy and self-direction becomes conceivable, and second, that this self-understanding is not something we can sustain on our own, but that our identity is always partly defined in conversation with others or through the common understanding which underlies the practices of our society.
Very important. I hope you are taking
The
note of
TV
that. Our very identity is always partly defined in conversation with others. Who you are is a conversation between yourself and others. So you are constantly a combination of your autonomous self and your relational self. This is the point. Your very being is not yours alone. The blood running through you is your father, your mother's blood, which determines some things about you or influences some things about you. So you cannot make the whole point he's making is what we started with. You cannot make relationality an optional matter. It's as if that one is not necessarily, I mean, it is me, myself, and I. If it works for me there, then I'll consider the other person. So 12 midnight, you are frying plantain and making a lot of, bringing out a lot of smoke that can disturb your neighbor. I think, well, I bought my oil, I bought my plantain too, and this, I paid my rent. So this is mine. And so you are doing what you like. You open the music in your car, very loud, in your compound. The house is yours. Yes, you built it, but you have neighbors. If you're a relational person, you will consider that you have an obligation to others, even in the respect and the fulfillment of your rights. You have to be conscious of your obligation to others. Okay, that's the whole point. So Taylor makes us know that your identity, who you are, is always partly defined in conversation with others or through the common understanding which underlies what our practices, the practices of our society. You are not a detached person that once in a while tries to fit into society and live. No, you are a member of human society necessarily and naturally. Okay, read. Say.
The theory
Read, please. Yeah.
is that the identity of the autonomous, self-determining individual recalls a social matrix. One, for instance, which through a series of practices recognizes the right to autonomous decision and which calls for the individual having a voice in deliberation about public action.
Read, say.
The issue between the atomists and their opponents therefore goes deep. It touches the nature of freedom and beyond this, what it is to be a human subject.
Very good.
What
You are
is
reading
human
well. Oh.
identity and how it is defined and sustained.
You have to highlight this very well for yourself when you are developing the argument. So the whole debate, which is fueled by the social contract theories, is about who a human being is, what it means to be free. Remember Rousseau's sense of freedom. You will see all the other authors try to give us a rendition of freedom and all that. What does it mean to be free? Does it mean pursuing rights, autonomous decisions without regard for rules, authority, collectivity, relationality, obligations, responsibilities? Is that what it means to be free? Freedom that has no restriction. There is no law that is governing it. That cannot be freedom. That's why God put the tree there in the garden. Because then, otherwise, the people are not human. They have to feel autonomous. They must make rules and be guided by the rules. That's what freedom is. The capacity to obey rules when you are capable of not obeying them. That's what makes freedom meaningful. I'm free to do it, but I don't do it. Not when there is no rule and you say you are free. Free from what? There's nothing that is obstructing you. So what is freedom if there is no limit? But when you put rules, there are regulations, there are responsibilities, then human beings' freedom becomes meaningful. Okay, so the point now is, what I just said is a viewpoint of what should constitute freedom that I have engaged with you. Now, Taylor says the whole discussion going on now between those that he has labeled atomists and the viewpoint that he calls non-atomist. In other words, he appeals to another view to critique this other view, but he is a middle liner, he's a liberal. that view and this other view are contending over what the nature of freedom is. How should we conceptualize freedom? And beyond that, what does it mean to be a human subject? Take note, not a tree, not a stone, but a human being. What does it mean to be human? Not that alone. If you open that out, it is what? What is human identity? And how do we define it and sustain it? So the human being that, like the example I gave earlier, that has grown and has been nurtured and civilized in, say, in a certain political tradition, will not find anything wrong with women remaining silent when men are in a meeting. That's how the person has been groomed. If you have an understanding of human subjects, that the human being is a complex blend of individuality and communality, now that is Miles, then you will understand why the sister will cover every part of her body and leave only her eyes. You may not subscribe to it, but you will understand her being and give recognition to it if she requires that I cannot wear that dress that you're asking me to wear to that institution. You can't force me to take off, say, the hijab. No. Because my being is not only individual. I am a communal person. I have relational others. And this means a lot to what constitutes my being. You see that? These are the implications of the debate going on. So what is human identity and how is it defined and sustained? It's not some abstract thing you sit, say, as example, and you sit in a Western setting and impose on an African setting, or you sit in your Christian setting and impose on a Muslim setting, or vice versa. You see the point? Because the being is not only individual, rights, freedoms. They say they are infringing on their rights. The person hasn't told you that her right has been infringed upon. Why are you imposing your conception on her? Her being is defined by her relational ties. Insofar as she's a relational being, you want to be careful how you interpret what her identity is and how you define it, and better still, how you sustain that identity. That is the point Taylor has made from start to finish. If you want to meaningfully engage human beingness, the being, the nature of a human being, you can't only be talking about what they have a right to. So that today you say someone has a right to change from one, makeup physically to another. So your mother, me, I tell you I'm going to office, I'll be back in the evening. By the time I return in the evening, I'm like a father. And I say it's my right. What about you, the children? Your right to your mother. What happened to that? This is what Taylor's concern is. So there has to be you have to be concerned about that. And my mother went to office, she came back, she has a beard now. She has gone to do plastic surgery. She has a beard. She has changed from something to balls and something. I mean, and you are just concerned about, but she has a right to what? Right, without respect for belonging, obligations. You see, that is the problem. But the other side of it is where others also will be talking we, to the point that they don't even want to give recognition to individuality and uniqueness, and autonomy. Then, so someone brings a wife home and you say, we don't want this wife. We will not marry this woman. You are who will not marry. Your family doesn't like this woman that you are brought to. Why? Are you the one going to wake up to see her face? She wakes up and she's blowing fuse. You see, if she's blowing fuse, if you love her, oh, these children. If she's blowing fuse and you like her, you will manage. She's yours. So the family shouldn't say we don't want to marry this woman. Only one emperor. Why are you the one going to marry her? So that is also problematic. Where you go extremely we look at the communitarian arguments that are referenced in the paper, in the personism paper, and see the problem that the personist has against communitarian drift also, where there is no creativity, there is no ingenuity. You are even trying to say, oh, I think that will shut up. It is the place of a child to break the back of it. What could I cry there? I went to say crocodile. I'm in trouble online. They will silence you. They're not allowing people to think, ask questions. They're killing ingenuity in the name of this is how we do it here. This is we. That is also problematic. So it is not only extreme pursuit for what individuality and right that we have a problem with, and which Taylor labels as atomistic, but also an extreme emphasis on community, social welfare. We. That doesn't allow for individuality and uniqueness. I don't want to eat fufu. I want to eat a mutuo. You say, oh, everybody's eating fufu to eat some. The upper side, everything you want to be alone. Why am I you? We have to be given room to be unique, to be creative, insofar as that doesn't undermine the social fabric that is sustaining all of us. That is why this has to be mitigated. You see, we do it. So if the individual is going too extreme, we help him or her find their way back. Remember, Rousseau, we will compel you to conform, insofar as the laws are not hurting. But if the laws are dangerous and are not just and are not helpful, then what Martin Luther King Jr. tells us we will do, we will disobey the laws in a civil manner until it is corrected. That's why we do constitutional review. That's why we change some of our doctrines at church after a while. That's why some things that we did in the past traditionally, perhaps we will not do any longer, like human sacrifices, stuff like that. Okay, so we keep mitigating and mediating it, making sure that we allow for individuality and also communality at the same time, not one against the other. Okay, big boss, finish it. Why? I'm done. So you read through everything to the end. Go ahead, please. I'm done. So read to the end.
Okay. So it is not surprising, therefore, that the two sides talk past each other. For atomists, the talk about identity and its conditions in social practice seems impossibly abstract and speculative. They will rather found themselves on the clear and distinct intuition which we all share, into brackets, all of us in this society. That is about human rights. For non-atomists, however, this for non-atomists, however, this very confidence in their starting point is a kind of blindness, a delusion of self-sufficiency, which prevents them from seeing that the free individual, the bearer of rights, can only assume this identity thanks to his relationship to a developed liberal civilization. That there is an absurdity in placing this subject in a state of nature where he could never attain this identity, and hence never create by construct a society which respects it. Rather, the free individual who affirms himself as such already has an obligation to complete, restore, or sustain the society within which this identity is possible.
Very important. I didn't want to interrupt, but it's very important to see how already is emphasized over there. See, rather the free individual who affirms himself as such already has an obligation to complete. It's not something he chooses. He's already part. He already has an obligation to his mother and father, his siblings, his society. Why? Because it defines his being. So it is not like he will choose whether he will belong to society or not. He's already a member of society. He already has rules. He already knows what can be eaten and what cannot be eaten, what he can wear to which place and what he cannot wear, what time he must not be seen around, and all that for that society. So if she's a woman or a man, a child or a grown-up,
All right.
that society, yes, sir, already places some obligation on him. And he also has an obligation, a responsibility to restore, sustain, and better still what? Ensure the welfare of that society. It is clear that we can only join this issue by opening up questions about the nature of man. But it is also clear that the two sides are not on the same footing in relationship to these questions. Atomists are more comfortable standing with what? The intuitions of common sense about the rights of individuals, and are not at all keen to open these wider issues. And in this way, they derive support in those philosophical traditions which come to us from the 17th century and which started with the postulation of an extensionless subject, epistemologically a tabula rasa, and politically a presuppositionless what? Bearer of right. When we see Rawls later on, you will see the point I'm making. Rawls talk about what the veil of ignorance. that you can make a fair and just decision if you assume that you don't know what is ahead. You don't know who will benefit or no. In actual human society, we know. We know already. If I'm going to grade exam and Enoch is my best friend, is my chachiku. Enoch, yesterday go. And I know that this is Enoch's paper. You say I should assume a veil of ignorance. What kind of pretending to be ignorant about whose paper would that be? I know if I'm a judge and I'm going to sit on my son's case, my only son that God gave me when I was 38 years, that has been found implicated in a matter, even I know that he did it. You think that the judge will willingly say, me, I'm obeying the rules, so I sentence you to life imprisonment, or I sentence you to death? Really? That is the actual human society. We already know. We are not an epistemologically, a tabula rasa, anything. But this is what Rawls says we should assume. So when we do his theories of justice, what is ahead of us, maybe 3 weeks from now, you see the point we are making. Taylor says all of these people are presuming, they are pretending, they are arguing from a certain starting point that the human being is detached from relational ties, obligations, responsibilities. It is not so. Extensionless subject. You don't have any connections with anyone. Okay. You are politically presuppositionless. He says, no. All these are not true. It is not an accident that these epistemological and political doctrines are often found in the writings of the same founding figures. This is his concern. But if the starting point no longer appears to us self-evident, then we have to open up questions about the nature of the subject as a human person and the conditions of human agency. What makes us agents of what? Decision making. We are agents because we are human beings. And so we come necessarily with our individuality, but also with our responsibilities. Among these is the issue about atomism. This is important for any theory of right, but also for a great deal else besides. I've given you some examples. But the issue about atomism also underlines many of our discussions about obligation and the nature of what freedom, as can already be sensed from the above. That is why it is useful to put again on our agenda this question of what? Atomism. I am so done. We have worked ourselves up because we had to go through the text together, but I suspect that you find it a bit more accessible now. Bless, is there a question? Please ask. We are done. Let me take the few questions you may have, then I can rest. Bless, if it's a question, ask. Okay, any questions? Bless's hand just went down. Thank you, Enoch. Any questions, friends, on Taylor's atomism, which you must tie in with the Miles paper to help. You saw the Miles paper earlier, so now that we discussed it in tandem with Taylor, you see where I'm throwing some light on what I think Taylor should have done to make his point clearer. Yeti's moderate communitarianism attached on it there. He's also trying to make sure that we are not going to the two extremes. But I feel that there is still a linguistic challenge there. If we are still using the individual and the community, and we are trying to bring them together by ensuring that we moderate it well, then ultimately we'll be giving one primacy over the other. So the language must change. The reference must be the person thought of as what? Having both individual aspect and communal aspect. Not that we are dealing with the individual versus the community. That debate will never go away. So that's the contribution personalism makes to the whole discussion. I have set questions on this one. I suspect you are able to answer them very well when they come up. Do you have any other questions, please? All right. If there is no question, then we are so done. Prepare your group work. Okay, Gilbert, go ahead. Gilbert Amwa, go ahead. Let me stop the recording. It's almost 2 hours now. Gilbert, go ahead.
Doc, please, regarding work assignment,